I'm gonna unmute you.
Gee, okay, I'm unmuted. You look beautiful. I love your hair. We're recording.
Oh, are we? Oh,
Yeah, if you want to pause the recording.
at all. So, hold on. Looks like I need to log into Facebook here. Can you guys hear the dogs barking in the background? Okay, good. Preparing live streaming preview. Sorry guys, I didn't know I'd have to go through all this. All right, has anyone? Oh, there we go. We are live on Facebook, I think. Bear with me on this first one. Okay, yep, there we are. So, welcome everybody who is here and who is watching live on Facebook. This is the first Spiritual Roundtable. I'm so excited, and feel free to weigh in on the comment section as we're talking as well. I will do my very, very best to answer them during the live. If not, I can kind of answer them afterwards as well. It's a lot for me to, I need a techie person. So what is the Spiritual Roundtable? My dream for this is to meet once a month with like-minded people to discuss topics that most people aren't willing to tackle, or that we collectively perhaps may be avoiding, or things that we all seem to have different beliefs on. And it just allows us to come together and discuss different views so that we can understand where we're coming from. And I think it will just help everyone collectively understand each other better going forward. So it's not to blame or shame or to even complain about the spiritual laws today. Although I do, if we start talking about a law and something has happened to you where a law has been used in a way that you don't agree with, or maybe something happened that it affected you negatively, I do also encourage you to speak about that as well, because our experiences can help each other going forward and in how we use the laws within the community. Basically, this is for me bringing awareness to how we can be better working for the light. Okay. And why me? Why did I bring this to the forefront? I don't know. There's something within me that I feel part of my mission is to kind of go in and break up the mold of everyday belief systems and to challenge them and to ask ourselves, are we really working at our best light here? Are we at the highest light? And how can we transmute the things that aren't working for us? Because I believe going higher into the dimensional energy, things are going to change. The old rules don't apply anymore. I think the universal rules are going to change within each dimensional energy, but that's just my opinion, which is another point for today. Is I'm going to quickly get into what I want everyone to know, whether they're commenting or they're here. Please remember, this is all just opinion for each of us. No one knows the absolute truth. We aren't here to quote unquote school each other or preach to each other. We're here to share our beliefs, our views, and our experiences so that we can help each other in unconditional love. I think that's it for me for now. So I'm going to put this over to my co-host, who's Brandy Yavicoli. She is from Feed Your Spirit LLC. And Brandy, I'll let you take over.
Thank you, Angie. Awesome. Hi, everybody. I think I know almost everybody. I'm so glad to see you. So the reason I'm here is because these are the kind of conversations me and Angie have all the time. And it's one of the topics that it's really nice to hear other people's opinions because it's so interesting. Everyone has different views. And I did go to the topic today is about the 12 universal laws. And I went to the University of Metaphysics. I have a bachelor degree in that, which is based on the New Thought movement, where the laws were really formed to get all the 12. So that's why I'm here as a co-host. But again, this is under the whole idea that nobody is an expert on this. And the purpose of this roundtable, I feel, is also to question it, to question everything. So that's why I love about talking about these laws, because the spiritual community has this idea that they just came down from source and here they are and they're just undisputed, and these are the 12 laws of the universe. Like they came from on high, the tablets, and they were written in stone. Well, they're not written in stone. They actually have a history that they were developed over time through they're the earliest forms that I've been able to find. And I'm glad Linda Tokai is here because she was also talking with me about this a few days ago, was the 7 Hermetic principles. And that was coming from Greek philosophy, from the occult, and alchemy. So we have these 7 Hermetic principles. And then that came really popular in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And then occultists started talking more about these laws, these principles, and then the New Thought movement began in the late 1800s, early 1900s. There was a Swami who came over from India, and people were just really looking at all of these principles and spirituality, science, philosophy, and how the Industrial Revolution was bringing a lot of new money coming into people. And a lot of people were becoming millionaires. A lot of people were like really catching this wave. So the New Thought movement actually came from if you think yourself rich, if you can turn thoughts into gold, you can alchemize this. And it's very interesting that it actually came out of that whole time period and all that movement. But they were trying to open their mind about it and be progressive and bring spirituality in, bring science, which is really interesting. It was definitely a revolution of sorts. So the New Thought movement started just 150 years ago and became very popular over time. But in the middle of the 19th century, the 1950s, 1960s, it really started to have institutes popping up about this and being much more popular. So it started with 7 principles, and then it was added to, and there's a lot of different books written by different people who added to them, talked about the natural laws or the cosmic laws, and it ended up being these 12. But it wasn't these 12. It's very new. It's a new concept. So it's interesting that they came from a lot of people coming together, and how the other laws got on here, nobody knows that because it's just super difficult to follow that. But it was like a melting pot of thoughts. So we have these universal laws, but I really encourage people to question them, to look at them and see which ones really feel true for you, and which ones just don't apply anymore. And the last thing I'll say about it is that this came up in a channeling recently. And I think Elliot was talking. There's Elliot. Hi, he made an appearance. But it might have been Moth's talk. That the channel through the crystal skull, they started talking about, and these are star beings. Star beings started talking about our universal laws and saying that that what we have on our list is no longer applies. Some of those are need to be rethought, and there's a lot more that need to be added, and that we should be working on this more as people coming together, bringing all of humanity together now. We have this ability to have conversations like this throughout the world with so many different people with different thoughts and coming together to really look at this and expand it. So that's what I have to say is my intro. And when I was looking through the list this week, really thinking about it more, there's half of them I'm like, yes, I feel like that is true. That's always true. That's a universal law, at least at this moment. And half of them, 6 are good. And then 6 of them, I'm like, I'm not feeling it. So I'm at half and a half. So that's going to be fun to see what everybody has to say about it. And thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you, Brandy. All right. So yes, you guys are going to get a chance to talk, I promise. So a few things I want to add before we get started. I'm going to start naming off the laws and we'll talk about each one. So there are some of us here that are complete experts on these laws. I'm going to tell you, I'm not an expert on the laws. I am only, and part of me wanted to really dig into these and really know what I was talking about for this event. And I thought, no, that's not authentic, because I would just be like reiterating to you what I just listened to or read. So this is coming straight from my heart. It's what I've experienced. And I'm like Brandy, half of these laws for me personally, and I'm not saying that this is true for everybody. And you guys can weigh in on this too, how you feel. Half of these laws, I'm not so familiar with because I haven't been affected by them yet. Or some of them, I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much true all the time. And then others, I'm like, ooh, I don't know if that's so true anymore. Or what I've learned up until this point that I felt should be said tonight is that I think with a lot of things in the spiritual community and with the work that we do, not everything is black and white. And it's not that I'm saying the laws are BS, quote unquote, but perhaps maybe it's that we're misusing them or misinterpreting them, if that makes sense. So we also must be responsible for how we accept energy that's coming to us, and then being responsible for the way we project. It's a two-way street for me anyway. And physical laws also affect spiritual laws for me personally. So all of this stuff came up that I felt needed to be brought up today. But again, this is opinion only. This is my perception. And I knew today was going to be interesting because I know there are many here that follow the laws to a T, no straying. And then there are many here that are questioning quite a bit. So this is exactly where I want us to be, so we can talk to each other and get different viewpoints. All right, so I'm going to bring up the first law that we're going to talk about. Law of divine oneness. We are all connected. And I don't want to be the one who's talking all the time. So does anybody else want to weigh in first, or have very strong feelings about this law? No one? I know Brandy has stuff to weigh
Yeah,
in
I
on.
feel like this one is hard to dispute. It's hard to argue against the law of oneness. I feel like that is, it's a pretty solid one as far as like opinions. Like that's, at least it's an ideal that, you know, hasn't, that there's not a lot of evidence to shattering it. So I feel that the law of oneness is good for taking it as a two thumbs up. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do my thumbs to judge the laws. So if anyone else wants to use that system, you can adopt it. So
Not going
I
to do
think the law of oneness
snaps.
gets a two thumbs up. Yeah, snaps. I love this law. Everything in the world is connected to everything else. Everything affects everything else, and we're all one. And it's just a beautiful law that encompasses everything as the first law. I love it.
I can't unmute myself. Okay, there we go. Awesome. Yeah, I figured I would start us out easy and not jump right into the ones that I knew were gonna have like multiple views. So let's go with the second law, which I think we'll probably maybe all agree on. I don't know. The law of vibration. Each particle in the universe is made of energy. I don't know if that's really disputable. I don't know. Does anyone have any other views that they want to share?
It's really connected to the first law. We're all connected. You know, we're all energy, we're all connected. So it's kind of tailors off of that one.
Mhm.
That's what I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
We're all connected through the energy.
Yep. Okay. Well, these two were easy. All right, I'm gonna throw it out there. This might take up the rest of the time. I don't know. The law of attraction, like attracts like. So I see some of you like, I'm gonna shut up. Yeah.
Before you shared about this actual circle, that was the only law I really knew from the universal laws because, like I want to say a year and a half ago, a friend had shared Abraham Hicks with me, and that's all about the laws of attraction. However, since then, I have watched some of Brandy's posts about the laws of attraction and maybe some others, and was kind of like, well, I don't know. Or I think it was also yours, Angie, where you're like, I don't really feel like it's, you get, you know, it's not always that way. You attract, the things that you attract are the energy that you've put out there or what you've manifested. So I'm not so like sold on this one as I used to be now that I've had a chance to like sit with it and get other perspectives on it instead of just the one all the time of from Abraham Hicks when I used to listen to them often.
Sorry, I have a hard time unmuting myself. Yeah, I am kind of with you there. Well, I'll get the conversation rolling because, again, opinion only. I feel like this is one of the laws that can be abused or misinterpreted or misused. And I don't think there's ever any ill intention ever. You know, the spiritual community in general, we're here to support each other, coming from a place of unconditional love. Many times I feel like we're trying to help our fellow friends and sometimes our clients. And I feel like, and I even just posted something about this. So for me personally, when it comes to the law of attraction, I have seen how privilege can really, really jump into this law. And unfortunately, a lot of the times It's the privileged who aren't aware that they are misusing this law because they cannot see beyond their privilege, or they're not aware of their privilege. And so they almost use the law of attraction against people sometimes, and I don't know if they're aware of it. And it can be harmful when you're on the receiving end of that. Oh, Magali has her hand raised. Oh, thank you for saying that. I don't know why I'm not seeing. There it is. Okay, got it. So it's one of those things where, for me personally, I've been harmed by this law, because I'm sure we've all been there where someone has told us we're coming from a place of lack. And maybe we're not. That person doesn't know where we're coming from. That person doesn't know where we've been or where we're going. Or is any of this making sense? And I think sometimes that's when it's not that it, because I believe in the law of attraction 100%. I'm using it right now to attract things into my life, and it's working beautifully. So it's not that the law doesn't work. I think, again, it's going to be that overall theme throughout this whole thing, that it's not that the laws are BS. They're just being misinterpreted or misused. So I am going to unmute you, Magali. Okay.
Hello. Yeah, I mean, that's one that I've done a lot of work with in workshops and all kinds of things, because there is a lot of misconception, and I'll share my own experience with that, and where I am with it right now, which is that I would almost like restate it differently as like whole attracts whole, or you attract with what you need with where you're at. And so you can say like attracts like, meaning, I mean, law of attraction literally is a certain vibration or frequency will attract a similar vibration or frequency. But it's also, to me, whatever it is that you need to get to the next step, or to become whole, or to fill in the blanks, to get the next lesson, or to whatever, however we want to phrase that, you'll be attracting that particular thing. And what is funny is, in physics, you have opposite attracts, and likes actually on the magnetic level, the likes repulse each other, where the opposites attract. So I think there's a lot there to work with, because you have the magnetic, the electric, the combination of the magnetic and the electric. If you think about how a magnet actually works, to make a magnet more powerful, you actually coil a cable with electricity around the magnet, and every loop around the magnet will make it more magnetic. So if it's where the cars go to die, they use magnets to pull the cars up, and you coil an electric cable around a magnet to make it able to lift like heavier weights. And if you think about us and how law of attraction works, everything that comes from our emotions is magnetic. Everything that comes from our thoughts is electric. And so the way for me that I explain this is, we say, however you feel is going to be part of what you attract. And then the way your thoughts wraps around what you feel is going to magnetize the emotion that is then attracting. So there's a whole aspect, almost like a technical aspect, that calls to understand who you are as a being and what you're made of, and how the different part of what you're made of actually work. I believe our mind to be a tool, and it's a manifestation tool. And our emotions, just like our minds, are things that we need to learn to use and to master. And whatever comes is information. So the information you get from that, it's then it's your responsibility to know what to do with that information. Have the awareness to recognize the information, has, you know, the knowledge and the consciousness in a way to interpret that information. And then whatever intention you have is now what you're going to do with it. And all of this is part of what I would call law of attraction. And if you take the basic part of law of attraction, it's just like whatever you're calling for is what's going to come to you. So to say like attracts like, I don't know if that exact way to formulate it means a whole lot to me at this point, because while you're still learning, while you're still not aware of all the parts of you that need work or need love or need, you know, uncovered or whatever, like while you're there, you're going to be attracting things that are not necessarily like you, but there might be things that will give you the opportunity to do this thing or to fill this void or to become and I don't believe in voids, but they're in your perceptions, they're voids, or in your experience. But I don't believe, I mean, I believe we're whole always, we just don't realize it. But we need that conscious piece in order to bring that wholeness. And once you're whole, and if you think about relationships with people, for example, you're going to tend to attract people who are going to challenge you or bring opportunities for you to heal specific things in your life or to realize specific things in your life, because the goal is to feel like you're whole and like you don't need someone but want someone. And at that point, instead of attracting people that are super different, you're going to start attracting people that are very similar, because you don't need the difference anymore. You don't need to highlight your own identity through the differences. So all of this put together is why I would say it's more like whole attracts whole, or you attract what you need with where you're at.
I like that. Yeah. That's, see, just, isn't it funny how we can just tweak words and it makes more sense? Maybe that's what we need to do with these laws, is revise and upgrade. Does anyone have any thoughts on that or what she had said?
I think it feeds into the piece of, as you grow in age and as your vibration rises, that you're going to see that things are changing. So for instance, you know, the people that you attracted into your life younger are not maybe necessarily who you need later on, because you've now uncovered more about yourself, you've learned more about yourself, and therefore it attracts different. So if we were whole from the get-go and knew everything, then we would tend to attract the same stuff throughout our whole life, versus its ages and stages as to how we attract things.
That makes sense. Yep. Thank you for
I
that.
love that. That's a really good point, is that we're looking at things with a funnel. Oh, something just came into my life. That must be something that instantly is here for me now. And it must be something that I'm letting out now. But looking at it as a whole, our whole soul journey in our life, and these things are coming in as the bigger picture, that changes the perspective.
Yep.
Interesting.
Well, and there's also a thing is, do you even see everything you're attracting all the time? Because you might a whole bunch of stuff all the time, but you only see a certain amount. So then how do you know like what you did or didn't attract? Maybe there's an opportunity that you totally missed just because you didn't see it. And we only can see with what we know, where we at, and the awareness that we have at that moment. So, you know, all in all, like there's so much like limitations in our perception that who's to say exactly what we attracted, because it's our perception of what we attracted more than the holistic aspect of it.
That's actually also talks about the law of relativity, that everything is our perspective, everything's relative. If you change your perspective, everything changes. And it like, yeah, like you said, what you're like, that whole thing, what you're looking for, you'll see. So that's what you get more of. So that's interesting. That's a like law of relativity.
It's funny because I wasn't really planning on getting into that one, but I love how they're all, you can see how they're all tying together. So yeah, that's awesome.
Mhm.
I want to quickly read the chat, so I don't want to ignore anyone. And then I might play devil's advocate for a second. Michelle says, I agree with Magali. In my opinion, you don't necessarily attract where you are vibing. I think you attract lessons and people of various vibrations in order for you to learn and integrate a lesson. Shawnee says, the other thing that comes into play is our deep-seated subconscious beliefs. Whew. Yeah. So if we cannot uncover those and heal those, for example, if you're trying to manifest something that you subconsciously believe you do not subconsciously believe you do not deserve, it will never work. So if we don't believe we deserve it, we're not going to manifest it. I absolutely believe that. Yeah, and Crystal said you can condense a lot of these laws into just a few. So maybe we've kind of answered this already, but I'm going to play devil's advocate because that's kind of what this show is meant to do. And then if anyone else wants to weigh in, please do. So let's talk about when someone says to us, because I know we've all heard it. So we're supposed to be like attracts like. We're high vibe. We should be attracting high vibe people. So why are we attracting negative people and negative experiences? And then we hear, well, they're attracted to your light. So what do you think about that? Do you think that has anything to do with the laws? Do you think the laws play into that? Or do you think we already discussed that with what we just said?
I'm gonna hop in because that also goes with the law of compensation and the law of karma and the law of equal energy exchange. That's another law that what you put out you're going to get back, or what you deserve is coming to you, or that you will be equally, compensated or not. And that's that law. Like you're going to attract like energy vampires or things like that. That happens because of the law of compensation. And you get what you give and you give what you get, and it all comes out in the end. But I also have an issue with that law, that I feel like the laws that go with the law of oneness and the law of vibration, and are pretty simple and straightforward and clean, that don't need a lot of explanation, to me make the most sense. The law of compensation, karma, that is coming up as more of an old paradigm belief system. And looking at that like that, we're programmed to look at these polarities. That's another law, the law of polarity. How can we have the law of oneness and the law of polarity at the same time? It's very confusing. Yeah, Bagley has something to say about that. She's like, I'll answer that. So she's like, I was just talking about law of polarity. Don't you know the magnets? Don't you remember the magnets? So, but it is interesting how some of them are on this one train of thought and some of them are on a different train of thought. So I'm going to stop. That's my little tidbit there. So Magali, you go ahead.
Because it is because of the law of oneness, and that's the notion of completion. And there's something that comes from the Vedic philosophies in the yoga, ancient thousands of years of old stuff, that says that everything is always complete. Like the moment is always complete. Nothing is ever missing of like a specific moment. And if you think about the law of oneness, and you think also of physics, and it goes with math also, and the notion of the number one, which goes to oneness, is that you always call for whatever it is needed to make one. So if it's within an interaction, within a moment, between two people, within a group, like because of that law, it's going to tend to create oneness within that particular moment or place or interaction. And so that's where, to me, the law of compensation is hand in hand with the law of oneness because of that. And so this is also why in a relationship, if you're not one, so if you did not reach wholeness, oneness within, you will still be in the law of compensation. But once you reach wholeness yourself, then you attract another whole person. You won't attract those that are still seeking that. So, I mean, again, my views, but it joins physics, math, and like these laws, and I see it work all the time.
Awesome. Thank you, Magali. I love your viewpoints. I can tell like you're really into this. So I appreciate you being here and sharing that with us. And I'm loving like I know the whole 0-1 thing has really been playing out for me a lot lately. So it's interesting that that came up because I've got, you know, other stuff tied to that. Very interesting. Shawnee, do I see your hand up?
Yep.
Awesome. Go ahead.
I have a friend who he's a writer and he's published a couple books. He actually has his first Llewellyn book coming out this summer, and he has created gala witchcraft, that tradition. It's for gay and bisexual men, and he has done a lot of speaking on the polarity, especially with creating a witchcraft tradition of all men, and how you still continue that polarity through a tradition of gay and bisexual men. And you know, because we all have both those, there's positive and negative, and passive and aggressive. We all have that within us, and finding that balance. So he has done a lot of speaking on that, and we could spend a whole night talking just on that.
I feel like that also brings in the law of gender too. So there we go again with like the melding of the laws. I feel like we could almost do a go live on every single law probably in its own capacity. So yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and the law of gender, I would like to, can I pop my pop
Yeah, yeah.
The law of gender is really interesting because the law of gender, if you look at it, it's interpreted a lot of different ways. Some people are like, this is just harmony and finding balance within. Some people say like you have to find your opposite. Some people say it's that we all just, everything has a yin and yang. Some say the whole universe is yin and yang, and this is the law of yin yang. But it gets a little iffy when you're talking about law of gender of everybody is either masculine or feminine, or you're balanced. So it's something to think about. I think this one needs a little bit of work, and it's really interesting that your friend is working on this exact thing with the witchcraft with Wicca, because that also comes from these teachings of thoughts create your reality. You know, your will, so mote it, I will it, so mote it be. That's very much in line with the whole concept of thoughts are things, and how this all kind of comes about. So working with the masculine, as a bisexual person myself, looking at that law, I have all kinds of issues with this law, and like little red flags come all up for me because of living as a person who doesn't take actual gender as like law. So for me, this is more of an outdated law. I feel like it's switch shifting, but I like the interpretation of it being harmony and balance. And looking at the concept of yin and yang, there's so much more to that. There's an entire religion just around yin and yang and the Tai Chi. So that was my, want to pop in there about the law of gender. Thank you.
And I have something to say on that too. Because the law of gender, and especially nowadays, it doesn't so much mean men and women or male and, I mean, it means male and female in the biology sense of it. But if you look at the level of the universe, it's more to be considered as forces. And each one have specific qualities and roles, and they're still meant to come together. And it actually in Wicca, when you create magic, you need both. And the mortar and pestle are the representation of the feminine and the masculine. And you need them to work together in order to create magic. And this is because in nature, you have these two forces and you just join them. And so we're called to find these two forces and unite them within, just as without. And in that sense, it doesn't matter if we're talking about men with men, women with men, like whatever, like that part is irrelevant because we're then talking about identity, and identity is made by society, which is not a universal law. Like whatever was created in society doesn't match what is in the universe or in nature necessarily. But so if you take that law of gender, is super interesting too. And if you're familiar also with Kabbalah, it works a lot on the masculine and feminine pillar in yourself in order to manifest. So there's a whole, it's a whole system of energies that you need to become aware of and you need to balance in a certain way in order to fully activate both of your forces and create the magic within. And you know, and as above so below, as within so without. Like I really believe that the whole hermetic thing, I'm totally sold on it because it really works. It works, but what needs to be specified every time we talk about things like this is, what are we talking about? What definitions are we using? And has that been derived because of society, because of, you know, social correctness or whatever you want to call it, or the evolution of values, because that is almost creating a bias in all of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree. Anyone else want to weigh in on that? Just want to make sure everyone gets their chance.
I popped my hand up. So
Oh.
I was really glad Magali was on here because I'm like, oh yeah. So Magali, I love what you said. And it made me think about how in the universe, and when we're talking about star beings and angels and different energies that come in, they're very androgynous. There's so much androgynous, and our society is really working more towards androgynous and just questioning gender and questioning roles. And when you're looking at it as energy, I have experienced energy as like straight feminine, you know, energy as straight masculine. Like, but you're right, it's almost it's forces, it's different qualities of energy. And to say that one quality of energy needs to be less that quality and more another quality to be balanced, that's kind of what I'm questioning now, because feeling those energies that are pure feminine, you know, and or just androgynous, like why do we need to be anything else? But androgynous, you could say, is perfectly balanced, you know, but it's an own energy frequency. So when you bring these energies together, they make our own frequencies and vibrations. So what is really the energy and frequency and vibrations? Is it that perfectly balanced, or is it like it's like saying what's good and what's bad? So, but there is no good and bad. Well, I don't believe in the law of polarity. It's like we should have a conversation. Law of correspondence and law of polarity equals does not equal. No, just kidding. But thanks. I'm done.
Thank you, Brandy. All right, so okay, anyone else want to weigh in on that? No. Okay. What I'm noticing and what is coming to the forefront of my mind in all of this conversation is, oh, I do want to read something quick. I just got off track. So Crystal says, I'm having a really hard time with these beliefs being labeled as laws. Is there not a better term we can attain to these concepts? Laws gives the belief that they are black and white when they're not. And I agree with that. And I'm also seeing too, as we're talking about this, no wonder we can misinterpret them or misunderstand them, because the laws will change according to our perceptions based on where we are on our path. So what could be really simple for me at the beginning of my spiritual path and understanding one law can be completely change years down the line after I've had enough to learn on my path about these laws. Maybe lots of aha moments, like now it makes sense, or maybe the opposite, where, okay, maybe I don't agree with this anymore. But I'm seeing, in just talking here, being at different levels and understanding the laws in different ways, that's not helping us either when we're trying to communicate sometimes with our fellow clients or even within the community. So it was something that just I've noticed. But what could we call them besides laws so that they aren't black and white? That's a really good question. I don't know. We'll have to come up with something.
But I don't think they're black and white. I think the black and white is maybe the level of interpretation. And when you say the law changes over time, I don't think the law changes. I think we change.
We change. Yeah.
And these are called laws because there are principles with which the universe, the physical universe, is organized. So you take it, the definition, as like the very basic meaning of the words. Like the laws is because it is structuring our known reality or our physical universe a certain way. And they're called laws in this sense, not change. And the work is in understanding them in ways that make sense, like universally, which is really, really hard, because you can take 200 people right now and you might have 200 different, perception, and thousands and millions. And, so when you make a law, it's because you're trying to set something in a way that even if there are interpretations, you're still trying to find a common thread throughout of that should, this is very interesting because the Hermetic principles were never meant to be written. So the way they were made and created were because people observed these principles in the universe and they made the Hermetic laws out of it. And they were never meant to be written, because as soon as you confine them by using words, you actually already distorting what they're meant to mean. So it's almost like so abstract that law is the word that is used here, and it's used in English this way. Who knows, how it's described in other languages, but they were not really meant to be named. This is the beauty of this whole thing, is we're not even meant to frame it with a word or with a phrase or with an opinion, because as soon as we do, we're already off.
Mm-hmm. Human coding.
I agree a little bit with that, because I feel like when we attach that name to it, a law, it gives it that particular power. And so I just quickly pulled up what I'm tripping over is the use of the word law. And the definition is a system of rules which a particular country or community recognizes as regulating the actions of its members, and which it may enforce by the imposition of penalties. That's what it's feeling like. This is not, it's not a law. I don't like that terminology used, because there's a penalty for not believing in it. there's a penalty for not following in it. And so when you attach the law to it, even if that wasn't something that was intentionally meant to be done, you create this energy around it where you have to abide by it. And if you do not, there are penalties for that. And so that's why I prefer, principles is a good word, or, I mean, if you talk on the scientific terms, they use theories, which, do have truth to them, but they also have, I feel like the word theory is a little bit more of a belief versus a law. It's just so stringent. And that's why I have a hard time accepting these to be the way it is. So I was kind of like just hung up on that and the verbiage that was used to explain these laws, and nobody likes to break the law. So that's why I just like this. And when I hear the word theory, that gives me an opportunity to see what I believe about this theory. What is this belief to me? And feel my own feelings about it, and then create my own interpretation of what, this particular theory might be. But that doesn't mean it's not true. There are tons of theories that have been proven to be true, but that doesn't, not everybody believes in, what we're discussing either. So you have that either way.
But for the Hermetic ones, they're called principles, or at least in the way that I've studied. So they don't say law for the Hermetics, it's Hermetic principles.
Okay. Yeah, I see that now in the chat too. Principles. Someone said, what about concepts? That's a good word. Guidelines. Before we go on, does anyone else want to weigh in on the conversation? I want to make sure everyone has a voice. I like concepts too. And honestly, Crystal, what you said really struck with me, because we should be okay that if we don't necessarily believe one, that we shouldn't feel like we're breaking the law, or we shouldn't shame ourselves if we don't believe in everything necessarily. I think that is so multifaceted as to how we come to those beliefs. Oh, that could be a whole nother video. I want to quickly see some of the comments on Facebook. Bonnie said, I once asked for help with my bills after my strokes, and bam, $40,000 taken off of my hospital bill, completely debt free on that. Yeah, the law of attraction, when you're using it properly, oh my, powerful, powerful. So that's one of those for me that it's a love-hate relationship. But when I'm using it to its proper power, it's beautiful. Alexis says, as someone who is a beginner in a sense in their spirituality, it makes a lot of sense the way Magali put it, because I've had so much trouble trying to figure out what's part of the bigger picture and what's good for me and what's just a lesson. Trying to figure out what I'm manifesting is coming to, or if it's a test. So good to know that, Alexis. And Lana just weighed in. Good insight, Magali. We are electric. All right. I think that's all for comments that I'm seeing. So that's taken care of. This is a lot of for someone who's like squirrel, this is a lot for me. Multitasking. So let's go back to the laws or the guidelines. What other one should we talk about? So let's do law of cause and effect. You get back whatever you send into the universe. How does anybody want to weigh in on that?
Feels like a repeat of laws of attraction. Feels like it's almost the same thing. Yeah, I think Monica maybe agree. Or she's talking to someone else.
Oh no, I just this one and the law of attraction and the law of compensation. I'm like, I feel like they're just repeating the same thing over and over, trying to get into some minutia of detail that I don't think is necessary.
Mm-hmm.
But again, there are lots of nuances, because part of law of attraction is that you don't have to do anything, and just in your state of being, of pure being, you will attract things, like whatever. So you don't have to do anything, really. You just have to be, and you'll be attracting things. So yes, there might be subconscious frequencies, there might be all kinds of stuff, but in that sense, you don't have to actually do anything. When cause and effect, there is an action taken or a will that's put into motion, and that has consequences. So to me, that's not the same thing. Like the cause and effect links up a little bit with karma also, because depending on the cause, like what it is that you caused, and did you intentionally caused it or not, that makes a difference. And the effect, like, was it adding to something or making something better or of higher vibration, or was it lower? Or the cause may have been that you helped someone, but in helping that person, you robbed them of their lesson. You intervened, and there's going to be a consequence. Like that person is now not doing the thing or not taking responsibility because you did that for them, and there's consequences. I mean, you can go so far with all the different ways to look at cause and effect, but to me, the cause and effect is the idea of responsibility that's thrown into that, which I don't really see for law of attraction.
I can see your point on the cause and effect being something that you're doing, but I'm not sure that I agree that laws of attraction doesn't also require an intention. You're intentionally, and from what and this is the only one I really know anything about because I listen to so much. And what I listened to about the laws of attraction was for example, let's use, you want to lose weight, right? So by not focusing on the fact that you're not losing weight, or not, you're, by being a certain way, that's an intention. By not being focusing on the fact that you're not losing weight, and thinking about this, purposefully thinking about what it's going to be like when you are beautiful, we're at the weight you want to be, and putting that energy out there, that's an intention that you're doing with the laws of attraction. But I also see the point when you're talking about the cause and effect, where you're purposefully doing something. But I think laws of attraction, you are purposefully doing something, not thinking about how you're so overweight. You're thinking about, you're putting your mindset somewhere different, because our minds are, we think about so many different things. It's so easy in our human minds to be in this state of, oh, I'm not good enough, or I want this, I want that. And how do I get there? You're intentionally putting yourself into that place of being. It's not a natural place to be, not for me at least.
Yeah,
so
but
I have to work to be there.
yeah, what we're saying is you don't necessarily need an intention with law of attraction. That's what I meant. It doesn't mean you intention has nothing to do with manifestation, because it does. But what I said is, with law of attraction, you don't necessarily need an intention, because there is part of that law that's a belief that says that you can just do absolutely nothing. So you're just being, and that's enough for you to attract your highest path or your highest good. Just like a plant or an animal, they don't have the level of will and consciousness that we do, yet they will always align with the force of creation and life, and they receive the highest of whatever it is in store for them. So we have that too, but because we have awareness, consciousness, and free will choices, then it doesn't, like, we get in the way of that. If we were able to be like total surrender to the life, the intelligence of life, and the energy of life, you know, then we would follow that. We would only be aligned with expansion and you know, like whatever it means to be alive. But because we have free will, for example, and we have awareness, then we get in the way of that, because we control certain things that other life forces have surrendered that control, or they don't even have the choice of that control. So that's what law of attraction can still bring you the highest. And there are people who practice the non-intervention, the just being in that state, that flow, and not will anything, because you don't know if it's ego willing it. You don't know, like, there are, you know, people thinking this way or practicing that, and finding pure flow in alignment with the highest, and they'll attract things too.
Mhm.
That's what I meant. It's the difference between the two.
This is interesting for me because it's making me see even my own biases and misconceptions of how I have been taught. So, you know, I'm being taught, oh yeah, there's absolutely an intention with law of attraction. And I think this is too where we can misuse and abuse, because we aren't always getting all sides of the law and how it should be taught. So, you know, if I'm always going to these like money making webinars and how to be a successful business person webinars, yeah, everything is based on intention. So not having that education myself, I wouldn't have known that part of the law, if that makes sense. And I think that's how a lot of the times things can get like misconstrued. So
Mhm.
I think it's good
Can I
to,
jump in?
yeah.
Okay, so we're energetic beings walking around doing things, and the laws are saying, like, the point was that this happens regardless if we change anything, regardless if we have any intentions, if we do anything with intention, this is going to happen. We're going to attract stuff regardless of if we have an intention. There's going to be cause and effect regardless of if we have an intention. All these things happen anyways. That's why they're called universal laws. Is this is stuff that already happens in the universe. It's happening all the time. The way that we can, the reason why we learn them and the reason why they're here is so that we can consciously change things. So it's to consciously change, alchemize, transmute our lives so that we can work with them and change and use the law of attraction by putting intention, using the law and cause and effect by noticing what our cause is doing and what the effects are. Using that, knowing that the law of action, if we take an action, it's going to amplify whatever we're doing, is going to be amplified. So being aware of that consciously, then we can add our intentions. So I feel like it's like, that's the way I see them. Instead of having it, you know, all mixed in there, it's happening regardless if there's an intention. So by putting an intention, we are able to use them positively for everything.
That makes sense. Thank you for that. I'm having my own light bulb moments right now, like, oh, that's why. I am also seeing like I can't help but compare all of this to the Fool's Journey in Tarot. Like, you start out here, and as you go on the path, you're like adding all of these things. I'm kind of seeing the laws that way. Like, as you're going through life, let's add this law and let's do this so we can create this type of thing. So yeah, very interesting. I want to make sure I'm getting everybody. So Shawnee said, I think karma is hugely misunderstood. I want to come back to that. Yes, I agree with Magali too. Cause and effect can be different. There's an intention or action that has a consequence. And yes, often interpret the soul lessons of others with our own actions and intentions. Another example would be the law of three in Wicca. If you were to hex another, you are intentionally wishing another ill. Again, I think that comes back also to the law of oneness. I experienced this myself where I was so angry at someone at one point that I was sending out all this negative energy, not even knowing it subconsciously. And man, did I get it back. And I know now where that came from. And I'm like, why is this happening? You know, we're so good at saying, why is this happening? When we should be saying, why is this happening for me? But I realized then that I was sending out, or I was getting back exactly what I was sending out times like 10. So I kind of see that a little bit, and I do believe in that. For me personally, I've experienced it, and I've learned to hone in on my emotions because of it. But I've seen other people doing things to each other too, and I've seen the law, I've seen whether that's the law or not, I've seen it come back. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Stephanie says, cause and effect for me personally is more about how I react to a situation and not the actual event itself. I can't always control what I what I myself put out there, but I surely can control others. Cannot control others, but I can control how I react. And cause and effect for me is about my lesson in reaction or lack thereof. So that's pretty interesting. It's interesting for me to see how we all have different viewpoints and how we all see things on different parts of our path. All right, so there's my hubby. He's the admin. He's our bouncer. Does anyone else want to weigh in one last time on that?
Yes.
What?
Yes.
Really?
I have a question.
Okay.
I've been watching the whole thing. I just have a question. So if the laws of the universe are the way that they're supposed to be, they're going to happen whether or not we change anything or not, then where does the law of cause and effect come into play that we have to do something in order for an effect to happen? They seem to be contradicting of each other.
I can pop in, talk to Dave.
Because I'm listening to everything, and I'm listening to Magali, say, like a whole person attracts a whole person, a not whole person attracts a not whole person. So why do we attract like other types of people? And I totally get it. So if we don't need to do anything for the laws of the universe to happen, then where does the cause and effect come into play?
So it's going to come into play subconsciously.
Okay.
So subconsciously, we're doing something and something's going to happen. So it's just the cause and effect happens in the universe. It happens in physics. It happens in science. It happens in our lives. But when we put intention and consciously notice that what we're doing has an effect, then we can work with that with our lives. So these are spiritual laws for people, for us to try to understand better. And they are all worth questioning. You were also talking about the law of action that says you have to do an action. If you want something to happen, you have to take action. Right. And I don't necessarily believe that, just like Magali was saying. Some people choose to live a life of just going with the flow and allowing other things to happen. And that's also the law of cycles and rhythm. And, stepping back and knowing that if you don't do something, that also has an effect. But a lot of these I feel are contradictory. And I think some of them are, that's why we're questioning them. So and thank you for popping in, because that's a great perspective.
Shawnee wanted to weigh in too on that. So go ahead, Shawnee.
Well, and cause and effect too is we may not even be aware of the effects. For example, if you're walking through the woods, you're taking a walk on a path, and you're in a meditative state and you're not paying attention to everything around you, you may step on an anthill and you've just caused a whole colony to be decimated, and that's an effect
Mhm.
whether you've consciously was your intention or not.
Sure.
So by us learning this, we're learning to pay attention to the cause and effect that we have. And that was kind of an extreme example just for the point of it. But there's no matter what we do, whether we're breathing or just walking a
Mhm.
path, minding our own business, um, everything we do has an effect.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I do understand it, and Brandy put it really well, where it's just one of those things where that what I'm hearing, like all of it makes sense, but whenever she said that some of the laws are contradictory to each other, that I just had to log in and be like, okay, someone make this make sense to me, because they do seem to contradict each other a little bit. So that's all. But I do get it. I just had to ask that. I'm a therapist. I'm sorry. I'm very black and white thinker. So
But again, like it's an appearance of contradiction, which doesn't mean they truly contradict each other. It's going to be depending on the interpretation you make of it, that it's going to feel like it works together, or it's going to feel like it doesn't. So again, like if you really want, like, it's like anything else. The first time you're exposed to all this, it appears a certain way, but it's gonna take time to keep, like, there's a actually I can recommend it because it's really awesome. uh, it's a very small book, but it's packed about the hermetic principles, and that's something that I keep reading again and again and again and again and again and again, because there's so much to it. And just like any subject, working towards mastery means that you interact with whatever subject or whatever thing, becoming master at something, or aiming to master something, means you're going to keep working with that thing. And it's a relationship, and there's an evolution over time, and you understand this, so there's a nuance that suddenly appears to you, and that's kind of what that is. To me, it's something that it's almost like seeking to understand, just like there's a seeking to master oneself, which I think is a big part of what we're called to do here. um, to master just us. And to master, you need to know and understand, which means you have to be aware. And that awareness needs also to be fed with information. And then you need to integrate that information, and see if it works with your experience. And between the knowledge and the experience, to me, is where you also create wisdom. So then that wisdom will be just a base of it's almost like a support for yourself, for your life to unfold. There is, and it's funny because we're talking about all of this, and what it makes me think about too is, when you have a default program that's there to take care of anything when there's no authority or when there's no command, and we work like that. So we have that free will power, but we have a automatic, like the program in the background that's just functioning on default mode, and that is regulated by certain things. So it depends what you believe. You can believe that's my blueprint, that's the information that I hold in my etheric field, that's my soul, that made specific plan before I came in, like whatever you believe that to be. But what that requires is you to step in with authority in order to yourself choose the commands that you're going to apply. So these laws are going to be working no matter what. They already work at first to kind of function with you, waiting for you, and not just waiting, but also creating opportunities for you to become aware of all of this, to put certain people on your path, to put certain, material on your path that are going to make you go like, oh, I never thought about this. And then you start thinking about it. And then by, there are certain people you meet or marry or whatever, it's for a reason. Your soul wants to get to that point where it's going to start opening and realizing this or this or that, because you want to learn. Every soul wants to find the point where they can shine through and really start living using that free will, in order to create your own reality, which is the gift we receive as humans, and seeded others. Again, depends what you believe, but we're here to actualize something, and we're here to create using all that we hold, which is all the power that is behind all these laws.
Yeah.
Or whatever we want to call them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I was not expecting my hubby to weigh in tonight.
Sorry, I just had to ask a question.
No, I love it. I love it. So what how are we on time before we get? Oh, wow, really? We're almost up on time. Okay, so let me just name off the rest of the laws so whoever's watching can look them up. I skipped a few, so did we do law of action is to achieve something, one must take action. Law of correspondence is our outer world is a reflection of our inner world. We did that one. Law of compensation. I kind of feel like we could do a whole other video just on that too. Because I think that's another one that's misinterpreted. You get as good as you give. Law of perpetual transmutation of energy. The universe keeps changing. Law of relativity. Every individual is tested by the universe. I would be interested to hear thoughts on that. Law of rhythm. Everything goes through cycles, rhythm, and pattern. For me, that's one of those that I'm not really sure you can dispute that one. I don't know. Law of polarity. Everything in the universe has an opposite. I think we kind of sort of went over that. And then the law of gender. All things have masculine and feminine components. Let me ask, is there anyone who wants to weigh in on any of those that we haven't touched on that you feel really, really strongly about, that you want to talk about? I had a feeling this is going to happen, that we would quickly run out of time. Yeah. Magali said the same thing. I was wondering how we were going to get through all these.
But it's so hey, and it's so fascinating, and like I'm waiting to see if somebody's gonna say something, because otherwise I have more to say.
Magali, you should do a class on these.
I do. The hermetic laws are fascinating to me, and I do workshops on like each separately, so it's very fascinating. I'd like to offer something here for the law of rhythm, based on some of what I was just saying, because I feel like that's a game changer.
Mm-hmm.
Something that came to me while working on that one is the idea of a pendulum. And if you take a pendulum, let's say you're at the tip of the pendulum, and the law of rhythm means that the pendulum swings from side to side, and there's nothing you can do about that. So you're going to reach highs and lows, and if you're at a high, it's never going to stay there, because it has to come back, in the other direction before it comes back again. And so what came to me, which was a huge revelation, is that whether you're at the tip of the pendulum or high up in the pendulum, it's going to be a completely different experience. So if you're at the tip of the pendulum, your tush is being dragged side to side, like pretty, like with significant, how to say, ties, and it can be rough. But the higher you go on the pendulum, the less you're going to feel that. And that's my way to say, as you raise within yourself, as you rise within yourself. So that goes with mastery, that goes with, instead of having all that default programming ruling you, you have more and more and more of a conscious free will way to be, which over the default programming, and that makes you rise within. So it's almost like there's a throne inside of you, and once you reach that throne, you're going to be at the top of the pendulum. And at that point, you're going to feel way less all these different influences. And that's where I am today, and that's something that I came to because of my experience with it, and whatever goes through my head. So it's not, I'm not saying that's it, but I'm offering that as food for thought, because it was a game changer for me to realize that. So I like to share it with people when we talk about this.
That makes a ton of sense. And I love that analogy that you used. It makes a lot of sense. And Michelle had said, I don't know, but the law of rhythm for me, could it not be referring to earth cycles, seasons, moons, tides, etc.? Or am I way off? I also thought of that as well. Again, I think these laws are multifaceted, and we can look at them in so many ways, and it's the more we advance, it goes deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole. So
I have an analogy.
oh, I love
I have an analogy.
Okay.
So Michelle, you're totally right, and Magali's totally right. I'm sure Magali could answer this question because she obviously is talking about self-mastery, mastering your own cycles. So this is also talking about the cycles of Earth, the cycles of everything, and the natural rhythm. Everything has a rhythm. We have ups and downs, and we have ways we're going. So she's using the pendulum, which is perfect because that's the first law of physics, is the law of motion. That came from the law of from pendulum physics. So super cool, Magali. Anyways, my analogy is Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde is a cycle. It's a rhythm. It's a universal thing that we experience, but we can use our self-mastery to rise above and work with that cycle in the best way. So that's kind of brings it all together.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? Does that good?
Yeah. To add one little more layer to that, astrology is also meant to guide us through that default program. But when you unlock full mastery, even that won't affect you anymore. Like there's a point where you actually transcend all forces because you are in full ownership of your own power, and it's all free will from there. Like there's nothing else because you reach that point, but everything else is meant to take you to that point. And it will keep working and influence you up until you reach that point, because that's the goal. That's the goal, is there, that point. Because after that, it's like blank canvas.
That's an excellent way to end it, Magali. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, that really brought it all full circle. Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you for having me, Angie.
Oh,
I know it's
thank
9,
you.
so I'm going to move you over to take it away. Take it away, Angie.
Thank you. I just want to thank all of you for being here. I want to thank you for just sitting in, even if you didn't weigh in tonight. Thank you for being here. I want to give an extra shout out to both Brandy and Magali. Obviously, you guys are like the experts on these topics. So I'm very appreciative of what you shared tonight, because I learned a lot myself. And I think it's important we have these conversations going forward and in a public manner, because look at how many other people can learn from these conversations now. So also a thank you to hubby for being our bouncer tonight. And thankfully we didn't have any trolls, which I was hoping would happen because I set the space and all that stuff. But keep an eye out. I will be, it's going to be on Facebook immediately. I will be uploading this to my YouTube page. And I will be having these once a month. So I have not come up with a topic yet for next month, but I will be posting it on my business page. And I hope that you'll all come back and weigh in. And thank you so much, guys. You all rock. All right.
Thank you all.
Have a good night, guys.
Bye. Good night. Thanks, everybody. That was so fun and interesting.
It was. Now, how do I get out of here? And no, stop recordings.